Hello and welcome back to Ask George after day 3 of the second test between Pakistan and England in Multan. Chief correspondent George Dobell on hand to answer all your inquiries, slate 90s Britpop bands, point out inadequate looking fruit. George, how was day 3 as you search around for what I don't want to see what remains in your room because anything could potentially come up here.
No, they're terribly kind. They keep putting apples and bananas and oranges in my room, and today I see it's an apple and an orange. Isn't that
It's
nice?
fantastic. Regular coloured
Yeah.
fruits on this occasion. Anything to share on that? On that? No.
No, the orange is green and looks exactly like a lime, but having now eaten them, they are definitely oranges and they're delicious.
Excellent stuff. Well, that seems like a perfect segue into questions after what was
To what?
into well, I've got enough experience of doing this presenting night to know when to move away and however awkward it might be. But we got some good questions after what was a really exhilarating day. And we're going to kick off with.
Are there any questions about mating
They
pandas
haven't come up.
this
It's
time?
strange actually. They haven't come up as much as we plea, and I really I'll tap up Owen, our social media editor, who puts out the feeders for questions. I'll try and get a bit more of that. Perhaps we need to start targeting these a little bit better as far as where we get these questions from. All about cricket today, which is odd.
Who would have
Yeah,
thought?
it's unfortunate, but we'll play with what we've got. But that's a real plea for the remainder of the series. And we're going to kick off with a real positive one from Andrew Frank, who says, "Is this the worst day of Test cricket under the current regime?" England in brackets.
Crikey. No. No, I mean, no. I don't think England do. I expect Pakistan will win this game, and they've been good value for that. I don't think England have got a lot to beat themselves up about here. I really don't. I think Pakistan gambled, yeah, and that's completely legit. But they took a big risk on the balance of their side, using this pitch again and winning the toss. And if they hadn't won the toss, I think it would have been very, very difficult for them. But they did, and that's fine. But England, the one the performances that bother me are when they let slip of opportunities. And Rajkot, I think, would be a really good opportunity. Was it Rajkot or was it Isaac Putnam? With the Joe Root reverse scoop when Ashwin had just gone off the
Mm,
pitch, and I think
yeah,
it was Rajkot. And England actually had a rare opportunity to hurt India. I mean, we're going back ages. And I thought they squandered it through bravado and hubris. People disagree, but that was my view. I don't think that's happened here. They're playing tomorrow. They're having a run chase on a day 9 pitch. And yeah, they missed some catches. That hurt them, of course it did. But I thought it'd probably gone by then anyway. So I don't think England have got a lot to beat themselves up about in this match. Um, and I'm really surprised to have that question, Andrew, to be honest. No, I thought there was quite a lot of good. I mean, obviously the catches are bad, but I thought Bryden Cass is just bowling magnificently. He looks more like Morne Morkel every time I look at him. And I thought it was a better performance as well by Showbiz Bashir, as I like to call him. And I thought that they've stuck at it in difficult conditions despite losing the toss. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised to hear the question. Maybe I'm reading it completely
yeah.
wrong.
Maybe it's not
What do you think?
recency bias and more just trying to sort of spark some conversation among us. I think like it definitely didn't have the telltale signs of a bad England day under this regime. I think that's absolutely fair. And if they go on, as you say, if they go on to lose this Test match, we won't be looking we won't be picking out incidents and going, "Oh, they were poor here, weren't they? They were. That was a really lax shot. That was really really poor." Like sometimes the other team can play really well, and you don't have to play badly for them to win.
Well, that certainly happens at times when you're in India. And I think in some ways it's happened in this game. But even the test at the Oval, I thought England were more lax there. I mean, Sri Lanka played very well, to be fair. But yeah, as I say, I think Pakistan have taken their opportunities in this game, but they did gamble. And there are always things that you can learn, of course. But I don't think it's been a shocking performance by England at all. I think there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. As I say, personally, and I think sometimes people think I'm a bit harsh, I wouldn't beat myself up if I were England about this result at all. And yet they might yet win it anyway.
There was one bit, just finally before we move on to our next question, there was one bit of, I got awash with sort of nostalgia at the end of that day where England were sort of trying to poke about a little bit. Yeah, I know they were sweeping basically every ball, but they were poking about. It was a little bit dark. The lights were on, subcontinent. It did just a little bit of nostalgia, I think, about that ending where England they were not having it their own way as they try and dictate terms so often under this regime, and they weren't being able to do that. They weren't being allowed to do that in quite the way they would like to. And I just got sort of England and the subcontinent vibes, a thing we've come used to before England started whitewashing Sri Lanka and whitewashing Pakistan. I just liked a little bit of that. I have nothing against. I don't want England to lose. I'd love this series to go to a decider, but just a wash with a little bit of like, yeah, this is what it's meant to be like. No, we're not meant to win 3-0 and win by an innings
Yeah,
all
no,
the time.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. All I'd say in their defence, and I know you weren't really criticising them anyway, is that it was really
Yeah,
difficult. It's
of
really
course.
difficult. You've got good spinners who have completely vindicated their brave selection, and they are Sajid Khan in particular is producing a bit of a masterclass. There was some beautiful bowling. I mean, the ball that got Zach Crawley, okay, he hasn't played it very well, but it is a thing of beauty. Watch it back. I mean, it lures him down, turns sharply. He's stumped by about a mile and a half. It's beautiful stuff. And you will make batters look silly in such conditions, but it's really difficult. So, as I say, I'm surprised by the question. I obviously have seen it slightly differently to Andrew. Maybe he's right, and I'll wake up in the morning and think what a fool I've been. But I wouldn't worry too much about
No, that
this.
might be for something else. Mike asks, are England ever going to consider batting a bit longer to look after the bowlers? This in light of Bryden Cass looking, albeit bowling himself into the ground and showing one or two after effects, I guess.
Yeah, he looked tired, didn't he? He's given everything. No, they're not under this regime. I don't think they are. I don't think they particularly take that into account. One thing they have done clearly is get really fit. They're a fitter side than they were even in India, probably, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But it is a fair point, I think. Who's asked that
Mike,
question? Well, I think that is a fair point, and I think it is something that maybe isn't taken into account, and maybe we don't take it into account enough. I mean, we saw the benefit of grinding sides into the dust, particularly in the first test, when Pakistan on the fourth day had to bat again, having just conceded 800, and it's really really difficult. And there were lots of times in both India in sort of 16 and Australia 17, 18, when actually England's first innings batting was fine, but then the second innings was not very good, and the bowlers were kept out there for a long time. And we saw the benefits of, I don't know, the physical exhaustion and grinding people down in the heat and stuff. And it is a factor, and you can't keep expecting bowlers to sustain their performances. But I don't see it changing under this regime. They're just going to be encouraged to be fitter. And clearly, I don't think Ben Folkes does look fully fit, does he? So there has been, to be honest, Potts, I think, has been what you expect him to be, wholehearted, decent, but Cast looks a class above, doesn't he? And so maybe they've relied on him quite heavily. But I think it's a hugely impressive. In a way, I think it's even a better start to his Test career than Gus Atkinson. Obviously, the figures aren't nearly as good, and Gus Atkinson did brilliantly. But it's been that good. I think I said a day or two ago, if I was picking a side for the Ashes, he'd be in it ahead of Atkinson at the moment. Anyway, it's good to have to have such depth. But I do wish, as the questioner Mike asked, that they took into account a bit more the rest and recovery time the bowlers need.
okay, well that's the end of part one. We're going to kick off part two with an old adage.
Subscribe to The Cricketer for a special offer price of just £1 a month. to gain access to all my reports from Pakistan and all the news and analysis from the award-winning cricketer team.
Welcome back to part two of Ask George. Chief Correspondent George Dobell once again coming in, phoning it in from Multan. And Occidental Tourist asks our next question, and that is, do catches still win matches?
Well, it still rhymes,
Still rhymes.
and it still rhymes. I mean, of course it helps if you take lots of catches. Of course it does. I think the game might have gone already today, but I don't know. I mean, it was a fantastic over from Brydon Castle, and he deserved the wickets. Paul Collingwood, after play, made the point that the slip cordon and keeper are standing very close, which is true. You know, the ones that Joe Root dropped, he dropped two, one of which he should have caught, one of which would have been a miracle. He's wearing a helmet because he's standing so close. So if you're doing that, you probably have to accept that more are going to go down if they come at full pace. The Jamie Smith one, I mean, it's aberrational. I think it's a bad drop. There's no way around it. It's a bad drop. I've mentioned Ben Foakes in my piece. I think Ben Foakes has been hard done by. Absolutely agree, though, that Jamie Smith can do things that Ben Foakes can't. But I'd also argue that Ben Foakes can do things that Jamie Smith can't. And it's a little reminder today. He'd have taken those. But would the game have gone already? I think the lead was already approaching 200. It's a lot of runs, I reckon, on a ninth day pitch. So something that they want to look at. But they do, they've obviously compromised a little bit on the keeper because of what he can do with the bat. It's not what I'd have done, but it's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's just an opinion, isn't it? There have been several days, Edgbaston Test match, he nailed it in that position. Old Trafford Test match, he nailed it in that position. He can maximise the run scoring opportunities with the tail in a way that Ben Foakes can't. But he struggled. He couldn't do that today with the bat, and he had, I suppose, a poor day with the gloves in that he missed a quite straightforward chance. I think my piece today is about, if you pick these guys who aren't the finished articles, these things are going to happen. I think probably at this stage you need to stick with him.
We have another question on this subject from Tony Taylor about what will it take for this regime to prioritise the wicket-keeping ability. One thing that really annoys me about this debate, I think, is that it's when Jamie Smith drops a catch, or Ben Foakes drops a catch, or someone else drops a catch, Johnny Bairstow drops a catch, and immediately we go, well, so and so would have caught that, and that's we do not know that, and I think it's a really weird stick to beat someone with.
It is simple. It
Real
is simple
simplistic.
in the same way that
You know who should have caught that catch? The person, the keeper who had the chance to catch it, not some other hypothetical situation that doesn't exist. There's no point wasting our time with that.
I think, though. I mean, well, that's all true. I think it is fair to suggest that Ben Foakes would take a higher proportion of such chances than any other option. And Ben Foakes would have completed the stumping that Jamie Smith missed in the last game. No, sorry. I think he would have done. I think he would have done more often. Of course he's capable of blunders. I mean, he missed chances. I don't think he missed any simple ones. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember him missing any simple ones.
No.
But he's human, and of course he will at times. I still think the question is, scrutiny is reasonable. They do have different skill sets, and what the hypothesis is that what you lose with Smith, you'll more than gain. As I say, I don't think it's necessarily wrong. It's not what I've done. I'm a big fan of Ben Foakes. I really believe in him. But I would accept that Ben Foakes doesn't have the change of gear that Jamie Smith has. And there is a scenario where they both play. But anyway, very often it is true in modern cricket, someone with good hand-eye coordination and basic keeping skills, and I don't mean to diminish Jamie Smith's skills because I think he's done pretty well to this point in his career with England with the gloves. But generally, that will be enough to get you through. Sometimes standing up, particularly in Asia, you might need more. But how often does that happen? And to be honest, I don't think they'll go back to Foakes whatever now. I think they are a bit stubborn. I think this regime is a bit stubborn. and ideological in some ways. But these things, they're not black and white. They're not right and wrong. They're just tactical decisions, and we can argue about them, which is part of the fun, isn't it? As I say, I'm very much a Ben Folks supporter, and if I'm honest, I'd be picking him. I think I've said that consistently.
Yeah, I don't know if we've touched upon this in either chats during this series or prior to this. Do you think Ben Folks will ever play another Test for England?
I don't, but I hope I'm wrong. And I think that would be really, really bloody difficult for him, because he's got to the stage where, his captain and coach are saying routinely he's the best in the world. Certainly his captain said it quite often. I don't know all the keepers in the world, but you've got Adam Gilchrist saying within the last 12 months that he's never seen a better display by an overseas keeper in India. I think that's what he said. And all the praise that came with that. He has been good enough to get, 2 Test centuries. And he's been told that he doesn't basically do it quick enough. I don't know. Yeah, it grates with me a bit. So how it must be for him to have worked so hard to do all those drills every day, all the stretching and stuff that he makes look simple. He makes it look like he's just terribly athletic. He works his arse off, yeah. I think that would be a very, very difficult thing to take when you've reached the peak of your powers and been told, sorry, we don't want you. But, again, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's wrong, because it's a team game, and the package of skills that Jamie Smith offers, they think is better for them. And you can see what they mean. So everyone will have different views. And some people will still be saying that Johnny Bairstow should be in the side, particularly Johnny Bairstow. And it's true that Johnny has a package of skills as well that is different, and has been a fantastic cricketer for England for a long time. So all these things come down to opinions, very few absolutes when it comes to selection.
Let's move on to our final question. That's from Andrew Harrison, and they ask, another excellent day's cricket in a dismally empty stadium. How long can Test cricket go on like this?
Just on that, I mean, obviously it's not a packed stadium. It's probably a wee bit better than it looks. You'd be barking mad to go outside in the sun. A gecko would think twice about that. So people squeeze up in the shade, and then certainly at times in this series, even in today, on one stand, I can't remember what it's called, on the left hand side, as you look out of the press box, there are quite a few in there. So, but the point, clearly you make a point. And as soon as we finish this, I'm going to be watching the World Cup game between South Africa and Australia in Dubai or Sharjah, wherever it is, and there won't be anyone there, will there? No. So these things are a worry. There are lots of extenuating circumstances for this series. For example, they decided where they were playing, 3 weeks ago? And there was just talk about exactly where they're going to play next week until 48 hours ago. It's a working day. I think did the series start on a Monday? I mean, really, they're not giving people a lot of opportunity, are they? And of course, it's broadcast fees that pay the revenues. But you do make a point. And they didn't sell the broadcast fees terribly quickly, did they? So there are all sorts of alarm bells that should be ringing. And we probably have to do things about that. So it's a fair question you ask. How long can we go on like this? I mean, it's changing all the time. With the cliche answer is, that old story about if you put a frog in a pan of boiling water. Why, by the way? Why? Such a weird analogy. I don't know why I've gone for it. Anyway, if you put a frog in a pan of boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you put it in a pan of water and heat it slowly, it won't notice and you'll boil it. Why that analogy? It's like I used the 2 ways to skin a cat the other day. Why? Why would you skin a cat? Anyway, there are probably analogies out there that don't involve cruelty to animals. I just can't think of any. And I think what we're seeing now is the temperature is getting pretty hot and the game is struggling. And it would be nice if we had, governing bodies who were either able to act or cared about anything other than where their next pay check is coming from. But we don't. So my own view is well, this is a bit miserable. Enjoy it while you can. It's not dark yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look great. The optics aren't great. It doesn't sound bad. I've got to be honest. It doesn't sound bad, particularly when Pakistan are doing well. Particularly when they were extending their lead beyond 200, 250 towards 300. It was down.
Well, you're a big Chumbawamba
Oh,
fan,
I
aren't
am
you?
actually. To be honest, what I've been
Chumbawamba.
doing actually is there wasn't. I didn't hear a lot of it today. I've just been relaying it in my living room actually while watching the day's cricket, just in case they don't put it on in between overs, which I haven't heard a lot of it today.
There was quite a lot of Titanic theme today, wasn't there? The Heart Will Go On or whatever.
I mean that should genuinely never be played in public. That song, because it's for Friday nights alone crying. There's no other there's no other purpose for that song, particularly not in the public domain. In an entertainment environment, certainly not. I mean, it's an absurd decision. There's been an awful lot of
Well, I thought it might
Skyfall
be
as well, isn't there?
appealing.
I've heard Skyfall more times than I would ever choose.
Skyfall does feel incongruous there, but to be honest, it's kind of become white noise to me. It's quite. It's funny. There are some press boxes in the world which are very quiet, and if you sort of raise your voice, someone will tell you to shut up. It's not like that here. And if you let it bother you, it would drive you mad. So there's a scorer with a walkie-talkie that's on all the time, and it's just white noise. And occasionally someone will shout in it in a way that sounds like welding. I mean, I've said a couple of times, is there any way that could possibly go any louder? But it clearly wouldn't, and the sarcasm's been lost. So, to be honest, I'm not really noticing these things. I'll tell you what it's like. Once, I better not tell you who it was, but I will do an impression of their voice. We were in a press box in Grenada. It's an outdoor press box, hot and noisy, but really fun, really lovely actually. And a tiny pink dove came to perch on the side of the press box. It's the symbol of Grenada, the some symbol of Grenada anyway. Beautiful little thing, sitting there going. Cuckoo. And one of my colleagues looked at it. I'm going to swear, so I apologise already. One of my colleagues looked at it and went, "Fuck off!" to a dove. So there are some press boxes which are very, very intolerant about noise. Not the one in Multan.
If we can please reach out to our viewers and our listeners, please do frequent the comment section with guesses as to which of our colleagues that story was about. I'll make one serious point before we go, in that I think, look, if the test match finishes tomorrow, then none of the first 11 days of this series would have been taken place on a weekend. With the third test starting on Thursday, which is
Also, the ground is out of
which
town. I
yeah
mean, what does it take us? Half an hour each
yeah.
way. So, and people are busy. It's not. Yeah. There's a lot going on, but there were empty seats in England this summer,
Mm.
and quite a lot of them at times.
But these are often free, of course, as well. The
Absolutely.
tickets. I mean, I think most of the days have been free entry, right?
Yes, there were some that weren't actually. I think there was one at the
Yeah.
start that wasn't, but yes, that's right. And I say there have been times when there's been a few there. You wouldn't sit outside here. So that does happen. But yeah, I mean the point is right. But we know the reasons. We know the lack of context. We know to some extent that. I mean, again, this sounds a bit miserable, but most countries in the world are having their ability to put out teams diminished. The Pakistan's slightly different. That is happening to them, but for different reasons, I think. But if you look what's happened to South Africa or West Indies or Sri Lanka, the pressures that are upon those teams, the threat of the franchise tournaments and all the rest of it, England are beating sides at times who are a shadow of what they were. I mean, I didn't find the Test series against West Indies terribly satisfying, in fact. But again, people say I'm old and miserable. I found it a bit sad. But I grew up watching the '84 West Indies, are the ones I particularly remember. And they were superhuman. They were fantastically skillful and talented and wonderful. And to some extent, Sri Lanka did okay, but they would have done so much better if they had a proper warm-up program. And of course, they couldn't afford either the time or the money to do that. So it sometimes the value of these wins is diminished, in my view. Now, it doesn't mean it'd be diminished if England beat India or Australia, because they're still able to retain the services of their best players most of the time. But that's not the case most of the time, and eventually people are beginning to notice that. If you see poorly contested games, or if you see poor quality cricket. I mean, I don't want to have a go at West Indies cricket, but the standard of that side was not the standard of the sides of West Indies teams of the past, and it doesn't feel like it's cyclical. That's my real worry. I don't think it's cyclical. Look, I should say hello to Richard Gould, because I know he'll be watching. I had a nice, honest, friendly chat with him today, and we agree on so much. And I've obviously been quite critical. And the only thing we disagree on, really, is that he thinks there's no way back. And I'd have a damn good go looking. But he makes a bloody good case when he talks about how the world has changed. And I do agree, for what it's worth, that we want the same thing. We want the same end. He's not out there just trying to make as much money as possible, he's not Tom Harrison. So we want the same things and disagree how to get there. And the world has changed. And I'm not particularly confident it'll ever change back. So I say again, and I actually mean it, enjoy it while you can, because it's changing pretty fast now. Will West Indies and Sri Lanka ever make a test tour of England again? 3-test tour, certainly. Will they? I don't know the answer, but I wouldn't guarantee they are. And if they do, how many more? So the world's changing, and not all change is welcome.